If you liked the video, feel free to subscribe. It would really help the channel. Thanks for watching. Thanks for stopping by. It's finally here, the Null Maiden Vigil overview. This video is going over the Detachment Rule, Enhancements, and Stratagems for the Adeptus Custodes Null Maiden Vigil Detachment. This is my least played detachment in the Codex, but I still want a helpful guide for those who want to play this detachment or are curious but do not know where to start. I also have an all Psykana list for the Null Maiden Vigil. I'll go through the units, highlight some of the Null Maiden Vigil rules we can use to buff the units. The list name is Girls Night Out. It's 1,995 points. Let's look through the Psykana units. We'll go over them quickly. I will do a deep dive on each one of these Psykana units coming shortly. Alea is the only named Psykana character. She has a movement of 6, toughness of 3, 3-up save with a 5-up invulnerable, 4 wounds, 6 leadership, and an OC of 1. No range weapons. She does have a melee weapon, Somnus. It has 4 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 6, AP 3, damage 3, anti-psyker 5 with devastating wounds. She does have quite a bit of abilities though. Scope 6 inches, a 5-up feel no pain, tactical precision, tenacious spirit, and daughter of the abyss. Tactical perception. While this model is leading a unit, models in that unit have the fights first ability. This is very big on a unit of vigilators. Tenacious spirit. While this model is leading a unit, each time that unit makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll if that unit is below starting strength, and add 1 to the wound roll if that unit is below half strength. Daughters of the Abyss. This model has a 3-up feel no pain against psychic attacks and mortal wounds. Next up is the Knight Centura. The same characteristic profile as Alea. Movement 6, toughness 3, a 3-up save with a 5-up invulnerable, 4 wounds, 6 leadership, and an OC of 1. You can put ranged weapons on the Knight Centura, maybe a Witchseeker Flamer if you're going to be joining her with some Witchseekers, or if you're going to join her with Vigilators, you just can only equip the Executioner's Blade and no ranged weapons, which gives you 3 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 5, AP 2, damage 2, anti-psyker, devastating wounds. Knight Centura abilities. All these Psykana units have the Daughter of the Abyss, so they all have that 3-up feel no pain against psychic and mortal wounds. Her abilities, Seeker Instincts. While this model is leading a unit, add 2 to the move characteristic of models in that unit, and add 2 to the advance and charge rolls made for that unit. This is big on a unit of Vigilators, so you join her with Vigilators and you'll have them flying across the board, making some reliable charges. Corner the Quarry. Each time an enemy unit, excluding monsters and vehicles, that is within engagement range of this model's unit and it falls back, all models in that unit must take a desperate escape test. And when doing so, if that enemy unit is battle shock, subtract 1 from each one of those tests. So when you combine this with the Detachment Rule, or any enemy unit within 12 inches of a Psykana unit that is below starting strength, they must take a battle shock. So if they fail that battle shock and then try to fall back from a Knight Centura unit, they'll have to take a desperate escape test, subtracting 1 from those tests. We do have a Psykana Rhino, movement 12, toughness 9, a 3-up save, 10 wounds, 6 leadership, and OC of 2. It has Deadly Demise D3 and Firing Deck 2. The Rhino has that Daughters of the Abyss ability for that 3-up feel no pain against psychic and mortals, and then self-repair for at the start of your command phase, the model regains 1 wound. And this can transport up to 12 sisters. It gives us a fast, tough unit for the detachment to move our squishy ladies up the board, and a Hunter-Killer Missile to give a list a 1-shot anti-tank attack. Next is our 3 basic Psykana units. The Prosecutors, a movement of 6, toughness 3, 3-up save, 1 wound, 6 leadership, and OC of 1. They have a bolt gun and a close combat weapon. For their abilities, Daughters of the Abyss and Purity of Execution. Each time a model in this unit makes a ranged attack that targets a Psyker unit, that attack has the Precision and Devastating Wounds ability. Then we have our Witchseekers, the same profile, movement 6, toughness of 3, 3-up save, 1 wound, 6 leadership, and OC of 1, and they have a Witchseeker Flamer, 12 inches, D6, strength 4, AP 0, damage 1. It is torrent and ignores cover though. Once again, for their melee weapons is a close combat weapon. Witchseeker's abilities, Daughters of the Abyss of course, and then Sanctified Flames. In your shooting phase, after this unit has shot, select 1 enemy unit hit by 1 or more of those attacks, and that enemy unit must take a battle shock test, and that will synergize with some of these enhancements and stratagems. Last up in the damage dealing units are the Vigilators. Movement of 6, toughness of 3, 3 up save, 1 wound, 6 leadership, and OC of 1. No ranged weapons. Their melee weapons though is the Executioner's Great Blade, 2 attacks, hitting on 3s, strength 5, AP 2, damage 2, anti-psyker 5, and devastating wounds. So these are our damage dealers. They have the Daughters of the Abyss ability and deft parry. Each time a melee attack targets this unit, subtract 1 from the hit roll. Those are our 6 Psykana units. Let's move on to the Null Maiden Vigil Rules. These Psykana units are Adeptus Custodes models, so they do have access to Martial Kata if they have the Martial Kata ability on their datasheet, which sadly they do not. So they will not benefit from Martial Kata. We cannot pick sustained hits or lethal hits in combat with our Vigilators, which, like I said, really is a shame. The Null Maiden Vigil Detachment Rule is called Creeping Dread. In the Battle Shock step of your opponent's command phase, if an enemy unit that is either a Psyker unit or below its starting strength and within 12 inches of one or more of our Psykana models from our army, the enemy must take a Battle Shock test. If that unit is below half strength, subtract 1 from that Battle Shock test. This detachment rule isn't the worst thing in the world. Below starting strength and within 12 inches is not that hard to achieve. The Psyker unit part is more of a niche part of the detachment rule. It could even stop enemy units from scoring primary points or even secondary scoring options. The big part of these Battle Shock style factions and detachment is what that army does while those enemy units are Battle Shocked, and this is what makes a good or bad set of rules when they're attached to Battle Shock. Next, let's take a look at the 4 enhancements for the Null Maiden Vigil. The first is Huntress Eye, Psykana model only. In your command phase, select one enemy unit within 12 inches of the bear. That unit must take a Battle Shock test. It is a shame it's only in our command phase. We could use it to possibly flip an objective if the enemy fails a Battle Shock test, or possibly stop Overwatch or other defensive stratagems on an enemy unit that we want to attack this turn. It's not an enhancement that will affect our killing capacity, but it does has its uses as a utility enhancement. Next up is Oblivion Knight. Once again, Psykana model only. While the bearer is leading a unit, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll. If the attack targets an enemy Psyker unit, add +1 to the wound roll as well. This is the best enhancement for overall damage. This gives the entire unit +1 to hit. Our Vigilators are our hardest hitting melee Psykana unit, and they will love hitting on 2s because they normally hit on a 3+. Hitting on 2+ will make these Vigilators much more reliable. So you throw this on a Knight Centura attached to 10 Vigilators. Once again, the Psyker part of the stratagem for +1 to the wound roll is very strong, but it is niche. You do need to have a Psyker unit that you are targeting. Then we have Raptor Blade, Psykana model only. Add 1 to the attack's strength and damage of the bearer's melee weapon. While the bearer is within engagement range of 1 or more enemy Psyker units that are Battle Shocked, add 2 to the attack's strength and damage of the bearer's weapon instead. I like this enhancement on a Knight Centura. It takes her up to 4 attacks, strength 6, damage 3 with devastating wounds. The second half of the enhancement is getting her into Blade Champion damage potential with 5 attacks, strength 7, damage 4, devastating wounds. It has to be a Battle Shocked Psyker unit though, and that's a lot of hoops to go through. I would choose this enhancement off the flat damage buff the character gets. Ignore that second part unless you get really lucky and find that Battle Shocked Psyker unit. Our last enhancement is the Enhanced Void Sheen Cloak. Yet again, Psykana model only. Each time attack is allocated to the bearer, subtract 1 from the damage of the attack. If the attack was made by a Psyker or Battle Shocked model, change the damage of the attack to 1 instead. And this is character model only, which means it needs to be worth taking over the other character model only enhancement, Raptor Blade. Sadly, it is not. -1 damage on a toughness 3 4 wound model with a 3-up save and a 5-up invulnerable is just not worth the utility and damage that the other enhancements bring, in my opinion, of course. I would try to fit Huntress Eye, Oblivion Knight, and then possibly Raptor Blade if I had the extra points, but Enhanced Void Sheen Cloak, it really depends on what unit you're using this on. It can be handy for filling up a list because it is a little bit more expensive than Raptor Blade. So if you're trying to hit that 2,000 points for your Null Maiden Vigil list, you could use the Enhanced Void Sheen Cloak instead. Next up is the 6 stratagems for the Null Maiden Vigil Detachment. First one is Anathema Blade Mastery for 1 CP. In the fight phase, 1 Vigilator's unit until the end of the phase. Each time a model in your unit makes a melee attack, it can reroll the hit roll. If the target of that attack is battle shocked or a Psyker unit, you can reroll the wound roll as well. This is one, if not the best stratagem in the detachment for doing damage. The Vigilators are our best damage dealing Psykana units. Each attack has Strength 5, AP 2, Damage 2, hitting on 3s with devastating wounds, and hitting on 3s with reroll hits is nice. You want to use this on a unit that has this Knight Centaur with that Oblivion Knight enhancement, so now you're rerolling hits hitting on 2s. The Vigilators with this stratagem is a credible threat we can use, especially into a battle shocked or Psyker unit to get reroll the wound roll as well. And with damage 2 and devastating wounds, that can pile up a lot of damage. Next up is Desperation's Price for 1 CP. Any phase just after an enemy Psychic unit has finished using a Psychic ability that targets a unit or finished making a Psychic attack. In one of our Psykana units, that enemy Psyker must take a leadership test. If that test is passed, that Psyker unit is battle shocked, and if that battle shock is failed, that Psyker unit suffers 3 mortal wounds and is battle shocked as well. What the stratagem does is actually quite useful. More battle shocks to proc some of those extra rules with a possible 3 mortal wounds, especially with the last stratagem where we get to reroll the wound roll against a battle shocked target. The stipulation to use it is awful though. Just after a Psychic ability or Psychic attack, it's way too opponent dependent to be a credible stratagem against those factions with lists with Psykers like Grey Knights or 1000 Suns. It becomes much more useful, but not something we can depend on game in and game out. Armies like our Custodes, where unless we're using Draxus, we just really have no Psykana units in our army. In a mirror match, we would rarely get to use this stratagem. Next up is Psychaff Volley for 1 CP. In your shooting phase, 1 prosecutor unit from your army. Select 1 enemy unit hit by 1 or more of your attacks. Until the start of the next turn, while your unit is on the battlefield, that enemy unit is prosecuted. And while that unit is prosecuted, each time my Psykana model makes an attack against that unit, improve the armor penetration of the attack by 1. And while a Psyker or Battle Shock unit is prosecuted, each time model in that unit makes an attack, subtract 1 from the hit roll. This is another damage dealing stratagem that might rival Anathema Blade Mastery when set up right. What makes it so powerful is until the start of the next turn, any attack made by a Psykana model to that enemy unit gains +1 AP. And this can be in the shooting phase or the fight phase. That gives us Witchseekers with AP1 Ignores Cover Flamers and Vigilators with AP3 Great Blades. When used right, this is a significant damage boost into that enemy unit. Psychic Abominations for 1 CP in your opponent's shooting phase just after an enemy unit has selected its targets, and 1 Psykana Infantry unit. Until the end of the phase, your unit has the Stealth ability, and Battle Shocked and Psyker models can only select your unit as a target of range attacks if they are within 12 inches. Stealth on these squishy sisters is better than nothing. Against a Psykana heavy army, this would be a very powerful stratagem. Although I'm not sure if this stratagem did get the change from 12 inches to 18 inches. If that is the case, this is a much worse stratagem. Purgation Sweep for 1 CP in your shooting phase, 1 Witchseeker unit. Until the end of the phase, add 1 to the attacks of torrent weapons equipped by models in your unit. If such weapons target a Psyker or Battle Shocked unit, add 2 to the attacks instead. On a big 10 model unit, this could be worth it to get 10 extra attacks. Also, depending on the target, if we're wounding on 6s, you just want to keep the CP, because even then, you're only going to get 1 or 2 extra wounds through with those 10 extra attacks. This can be used in combination with Psychaff Volley to get AP1 on the Witchseeker Flamers against 1 enemy unit, and all of a sudden, an extra attack per model isn't that bad. Against a Psyker unit plus 2 attacks, it could be barbecue time. Our last stratagem for the Null Maiden Vigil is Witchseekers for 1 CP. In your shooting or the fight phase, 1 Psykana unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot or fight this phase. You can select either lethal hits or sustained hits. Until the end of the phase, weapons equipped by models in your unit have the selected ability, but models in your unit can only target Psyker units with their attacks. This could have been a great stratagem. The Psykana units do not have the Martial Kata ability, so they do not have access to sustained hits or lethal hits in the fight phase. This stratagem could have fixed that, but it has to be into enemy Psyker units. A strong stratagem, but once again, we need a Psyker enemy unit for it to work. It's too niche. It's just a shame that this wasn't just lethal hits or sustained hits or +1. It's not that strong. We don't have big hard-hitting units, so it would have been a nice way to boost the damage of these sisters. So that's the Detachment Rule, the Enhancements, and the Stratagems for the Null Maiden Vigil. And as you can see here, it does revolve a lot around battle shock, but there's not a lot of strong rules, and get a little extra damage, but it really depends on playing against enemy Psyker units. If you're not getting these battle shocks off, you're not going to get the extra damage, and you're just going to get overwhelmed. These sisters are squishy, they're only toughness 3, 3-up save with 1 wound each, there's no invulnerable saves, so they will get mowed down if they don't have ways to increase their damage and kind of keep the ball rolling. So if the enemy starts passing a lot of these battle shocks, if there's no Psyker units, they're going to have a hard time. Let's move on to my list. It's all Psykana units, all sisters, pretty much maxing out every Psykana unit we could take to reach that 2,000 point limit. This is my Null Maiden Vigil list. I've named it Girls Night Out. It comes to 1,995 points. Our warlord is Alea. We have 3 other Knight Centurias in the list. All of them have enhancements. One has the Huntress Eye, the other Oblivion Knight. The last has the enhanced Void Sheen Cloak. For our battle line, we have 1 unit of 10 prosecutors, then we have 4 units of 9 prosecutors. For our other data sheets, we have 3 units of 10 Witch Seekers, 3 units of 10 Vigilators, one of them will be joining Alea, the other with 2 of the Knight Centurias. Then we'll put one of those Witch Seeker groups with the last Knight Centuria. Our dedicated transports, we have 6 Psykana Rhinos, just so we can fill the board full of some tough, hard to kill units. They have a Stormbolter and a Hunter Killer Missile each, so there is a little bit of anti-tank, but not a lot. And that is my list. It's all sisters units. It comes to 1,995 points. Let's go over some final thoughts. There is some fun to be had in these rules. Having a large amount of models on the board would be quite different than the normal Custodes list. In a casual environment, this detachment could make a good balanced game. In the competitive setting, it's too reliant on enemy Psyker units to bring up the full limited power of the detachment, but like I said, it's still a fun, fluffy detachment. Subscribe for weekly battle reports, list videos, and other Warhammer 40K content. Thanks for watching. Thanks for stopping by.